Hello, and welcome to Make Some Music with Scratch. I'm Marin, aka Algorithmer on the Scratch team. I'm a Scratch Learning Resource Designer, and I'll be your session facilitator today. A copy of the slides that I am sharing in this presentation is available on our website in our Learning Library, where you'll also find many of the resources I'll link to today. This is the first in our series of 6 sessions on leveling up with Scratch. Each session focuses on a different topic, and my goal with each session is to give you a variety of ways to approach creative projects on each of the 6 topics. The Scratch Foundation is grateful to AT&T for its support of this workshop series. We have partnered with the Achievery from AT&T to provide free beginner and intermediate creative coding lesson plans on a variety of topics for educators, caregivers, and learners. I'll share some of those resources throughout the session today. To code along with me today, you can go to scratch.mit.edu and click Create, or log into your free Scratch account to save projects. For anyone new to Scratch, we have Getting Started resources on our platform and in our Learning Library with lots of helpful information. But a few quick basics. The Scratch Project Editor screen is where you'll create projects in Scratch. If you aren't already on this Project Editor screen, click the See Inside button, which is available on all projects. Any character or object you can code is called a sprite. To code projects in Scratch, start by dragging out a block from the block palette to the script area. You can click the block to try it. Then snap another block to it to build your script. If you chose when the green flag is clicked to run the code, click the green flag above the stage. You can choose your preferred language or color mode, original or high contrast, under Settings, and see our tutorials or debug buttons for helpful tips when creating projects. When logged in, you'll also have access to Remix projects, which is making a copy of someone else's shared project to modify. I highlight some remix opportunities in this series. Or share a project that you created inspired by this series, using the Share button to make your project public. We have a lot to talk about today, but I do want to share one slide to ground us in Scratch's creative learning philosophy. And for those newer to our workshops and creative learning materials, I encourage you to check out our Scratch Creative Learning Philosophy resource in the Learning Library on our website. As facilitators, we want to support playful learning and tinkering mindset values so that participants can engage playfully in projects that are meaningful to them and elicit joy, collaborate with peers to experiment, share, and celebrate ideas, allowing for multiple pathways of engagement to foster a wide diversity of projects and supporting different experience levels. We want to help them develop a mindset that is comfortable with the discomfort of getting stuck, making room for risk and iteration, as well as develop a mindset that thinks critically about strategies for getting unstuck, saving space for the process to start again, and help them imagine what's next. We often call this productive struggle. And this applies to you too. Remember that we are learners just as much as our learners. So, as we explore today, give yourself space and grace, and remember it's okay to get stuck or feel uncomfortable. You don't have to have all the answers right away, just a curious mind and an excitement to try new things. That is part of the process and how we develop and model a growth mindset for our learners. So let's dive in. I have so much to share with you. We're going to explore the Scratch sound library, which is full of a variety of sound effects, voices, longer sound loops. We're going to try some music extension blocks. And along the way, we're going to explore with options to use sound to make your project interactive, using inputs like keyboard keys, the mouse, uh, even features of your face or things like the makey makey. So we're going to have some fun today. I hope you'll get some great inspiration. By the end of the session series, my goal is that you will walk away with a variety of resources and an understanding of our Scratch Creative Learning philosophy and our creative learning spiral so that you can feel comfortable engaging learners on these session topics and using Scratch in your classrooms. Today's session is really focused on helping us identify good use cases for sound in Scratch projects and creating projects using sound in a variety of ways. Along the way, I'll show some starter projects that you can remix and add personalized touches. And of course, we always love to reflect and share. Using sound in a game, an animation, or a story interactive project can really add depth and emotion. So, for instance, I'm going to play you an animation here. It's the same animation for the spider, but see if it feels different with different sounds underneath. The first sound for me really made me think of a spider creeping through a dark forest or a scary scene. Whereas the second sound loop felt to me more like the spider was running in a race. And then the third sound loop made me think of dancing. So, with those animations underneath, you kind of got a sense of what I was feeling. The funny thing was that the animation of the spider itself remained the same. It was just really the sound that gave the legs moving a different feel. So, sound can be really powerful. And music and sound in Scratch can be approached in a multitude of ways. So I love to explore using sound from the sound library and ways to manipulate it. And one of the places I often start is choosing a sound. So when you're in Scratch and you're going into the sound menu to choose a sound, you'll want to start by placing that sound block at a point anywhere in your script. And then just really start playing with the different sound blocks. And what is the difference between blocks like start sound and play sound until done? I'm going to go to the sound category. And what we're exploring is really the difference between start sound and play sound until done. You might not notice at first what the difference is until you add something afterwards. So maybe I'm going to have the cat turn after I run each of these blocks. Let's see the difference. The sound for start sound starts when the block is the block continues to run to the next item on the list once that block is clicked. So there's no pause. It starts and then it continues on to the next block, which was that turn block. Versus play sound until done, which waits until that whole sound is finished before continuing the next block. And so, one of the interesting things about that is that sometimes students get tripped up with that, right? They're not sure which one they want, if they want that delay or not. And so, I always love kind of being very hands off and letting them explore and really testing out and seeing the difference. The other thing that you can do with sound is that you can go into the sounds tab and you can actually manipulate the sound. So using the blocks here, I can actually delete parts of the sound. I'm going to zoom my screen in a little bit more so you can see what I'm doing. I can just select a piece and actually delete it. I can speed the sound up or go slower. These are all things that I can do to manipulate the sounds that are already in that sound library in Scratch. Another thing that you can do is you can use sounds in a project to trigger sounds to play with keyboard keys or mouse clicks. So a lot of kids love to make things like soundboards. And so this is kind of a version of that. We have an Achiever unit called Looperman. And loops are clips of music that you can repeat and layer to create a whole composition. So today's DJs can use buttons to trigger on their consoles and connect to the computer to layer in sound effects and curated beat samples. The Scratch Sound Library has loops as a category of sounds, and you can explore those and think about how to pair sounds or layer sounds to create something new. I encourage you to check out our starter project, which is DJ Scratch Cat, and it lets you create your own unique project to mix and match sounds. In this project, we can use those keyboard keys in order to trigger. I don't know how my DJ skills are doing today, but there was a little example. I was clicking on the Z, X, and C keys in order to add some additional sounds and layer them over the top of that underlying beat. That is a really fun way to start to think about also how are these technologies used, not just here in the Scratch environment, but in the real world for folks like professional DJs who are doing this for a living. Another thing that you will want to try out, I think, is changing pitch and volume. So, pitch and volume, if you've never explored them before, allow us to manipulate sounds via the code blocks. So, before I was kind of manipulating the sound using that sound editor, but here I can actually do it using those code blocks. So, in that sound category, you'll see blocks about pitch and volume. There are also blocks to stop the sounds that are currently playing, to clear sound effects like the pitch, to give users control over maybe hearing or muting continuous background sound. Sometimes that can be really overwhelming to viewers of the project, and they want the ability to turn that sound on or off. So there are a number of ways to approach giving that kind of control. This slide shares a couple of code block examples where clicking a sprite checks the volume level, then sets it to 100 or 0, depending on your current state. And in this solution, this song is continually playing. So once you unmute, it sort of picks back up from where it's been playing all along. There's also a different way you could approach. You could have it completely stop the sound loop and then start it over again once the sound turns back on. There are lots of different ways that you can accomplish a similar goal with different block options. And so that's always one of the things that I really love to encourage is that there's no one right way. Your students might come up with a different version than you. One group in the coding pair may come up with a different version than the other. And it's a great way to sort of have those conversations about why did you make the choices you did? Uh, is there a different way? Have you considered this other thing? And give folks an opportunity to see that there is a lot of variety that they can use when working with code. One example of a project by educator Chris Colley, who used that change in pitch and size for a really dramatic effect. I really love this, so I'm going to be quiet here. Now this is moving pretty slow, so I'm going to go inside and I'm actually going to manipulate it a little bit. I'm going to change the size by 10 and the pitch by 10, and then let's see the difference. So I loved the effect that that had. It really made me feel like I was being approached by the bat. It could be a little intimidating, right? But it was a lot of fun. And that sound change just added something else, a different element to the feeling of that project than keeping the sounds consistent. And so that's one of the reasons I love playing with pitch is to see the emotion that it can trigger. One of the starter projects that I have shared in this slide deck with you is a starter project called Catch the Fish, Increase the Pitch. And it's a really fun example of how you can add emotion and excitement to a game by playing with the pitch of the sound. This game, it works so that as you are clicking on the fish, the music sort of gets higher and higher in pitch as you go along, which creates this sense of urgency, like you need to click faster, time is running out. There's not necessarily a time limit set on this particular game, but the music gives you that sense of urgency, which is something that I find really fun about this particular project. Another fun way of interacting with sounds is to build a soundboard in Scratch using keyboard keys or a mouse to click and activate sounds. One added twist that I really love to do is to use face sensing blocks, which are our predictive AI blocks, in order to create a soundboard or a musical instrument that can be played with the features of your face. As I run my mouth over these buttons,
Hello. Thanks. Thanks.
you can see that it is recognizing where my eyes, nose, mouth are, and I can use these features of my face in order to control the sounds. I could use where my eye is, where the top of my head is, and you can see there are different applications for this in a wide variety of projects. But I also love this because it really is a nice accessibility piece. If you have dexterity issues or you just need to get your body moving because quite frankly everyone gets a little squirrely sitting a long time for sometimes. This is a really fun way of getting your body active and engaged in the project. And the lovely thing is, I should mention, this is very safe. It's not recording or storing any images of your face. The video is totally private to your machine, and so it's a really fun way of engaging with AI, also in a very safe space. And I have all sorts of fun ideas about ways to use these that I will share with you in the resources and upcoming webinars. Next thing that we can actually do is add a music extension. So if you have never seen our extension blocks, when you go to that lower left corner of the project editor, you can choose the music extension blocks. And the really nice thing about these blocks is that they give you the ability to compose things like your own original score or recreate a song. There are a limited number of note sounds in the sound library itself. But when you get into these music extension blocks, you can actually select a note from a range of notes on the keyboard and then also from a range of instruments. So you can have a saxophone or a xylophone or even a choir sound for each one of these notes. I love to use these for both the variety of sounds that I can get out of here, but also it's a kind of a really fun way, I think, to think about music. And so when you think about the structure of a piece of music, typically there are verses and choruses that are repeated throughout the song. And so the first thing that might try to do if I was to create a sound project, recreating say a musical score that I love, is can I identify the correct notes? And then can I identify any repeating parts? Now, we have been talking about leveling up. So you could create a simple melody using those sound blocks where you start the sound and layer them all together in order to create a chord. Or you could have notes to play at the same time using these sound blocks. And so when I press, say, a keyboard key, I can play these notes at the same time. So here's just an example of, again, multiple approaches to something. These do similar things, but they are set up using different blocks in a slightly different way. And it's really about what is the need of your user and what do they want to accomplish here. So multiple avenues for creation. And then to extend it even further and keep leveling up, for the repeating parts, if there's a set of notes that's just playing over and over again, rather than rewrite the same notes sequence multiple times, we can use custom my blocks in order to create a sequence that can be called by going to another block and calling it every time. So you only need to write it once, and then if you use it 10 times in a song, you just have to use one my block in order to call for that part. So one example of that is this Fleur-Elise project that I have here. So hopefully you heard my song there. So when we see inside, you can see how this was actually created. And what happened was I identified the parts of the song that would repeat. So here you can see I noted that there's sort of a first section that kind of repeats twice. Then there's a unique second section. And then now those first selections of notes play again. Once I'd identified those repeating sections, I then used a My Block to set up individual parts. So if you've never used My Blocks before, we're over here in the My Blocks section, and all you do is you click to make a block. You can define what the block's name is, and then you get this. There's so much going on the screen. Let's see if I can move it here. And then you get this little define block where you can define your procedure. So it could be anything. Here I have sound, but your block could be, move or twist or all sorts of things. So maybe I'm going to have it play a drum beat, and then I'm going to have it play bass, and then I'm going to have it try this. Excellent. So now I can put those blocks all under this custom block. And then the next time I want to run that sequence, now I have named this. Let's name this drums. Now every time I want to play those drums, instead of adding those 3 blocks over and over again, I can just use this one block, drums. And so I can put that into a sequence. Maybe I want to have it play drums, have a sprite move and turn, and then play drums again. You can see my little name sign there kind of moved and twisted a bit. But the nice thing is that really makes your project much more efficient to write and to edit. If I wanted to change one of these drums suddenly to the bongo, I can do that in one place, and it changes it in all places where I've called for that drums block. And so it makes it a lot faster for me to edit, play with order, manipulate maybe the length of those sounds. I could change these to be one beat, and let's go with vibra slap. You never know what you're going to get when I start putting projects together live on the screen. But there we go. It's a really fun way of sort of interacting with different sounds, and also these great cross-curricular connections, because as we are doing this here, this could be something that the music teacher joins you in. And so you're thinking about piece of a composition, how you can decompose it, right? Break it down into individual steps, in this case, individual notes, identify loops, in this case, repeating choruses, and how a song comes together. So you can see how you've now melded the magic of code with music. And maybe that brings in a student of yours who was perhaps less interested in coding before, but they really love music. It's a wonderful way of finding people where they're at and what their interests are, and engaging them in the experience. So even if they aren't interested in being a coder, they're using that algorithmic mindset, decomposing sequence, in order to engage with this piece of music. Another thing that I really love to do is to manipulate tempo. So the tempo block is one that controls how fast or slow the music extension notes play. We kind of played with the beat there in the block, in the individual blocks. Standard tempo is 60 beats per minute, which means one beat can be played every 1 beat will be played each second. So 60 beats per minute. But we can actually speed up the entire sequence by adjusting the tempo. So I'm going to go here to my tempo block, and I'm going to set it to, let's go faster. So here's the original. I'm going to make sure it's 60, play you the original. Now I'm going to set the tempo to twice the speed, and let's see what happens. So there's an easy way. I've used one block to manipulate the speed of all of my notes in this project. And if I hit that green flag, There's my fleur-de-lis. But if I change this tempo, which was set at 80 to say 160, or maybe I want to change it down to 20. And it's interesting how just changing that tempo really also affects the emotion, I think, and the vibrancy of it. One sort of sounded very melancholy when you slowed it down versus when it was sped up. It was much more energetic and exciting. And so just a really neat way of seeing how you can manipulate sound to again give that a sense of emotion in your project. Other thing that I also really love to do in terms of a music connection is to think about how technologies and computer have affected music creation. And so we have this lovely achiever unit called notation and rhythm. And what I love about this is it brings your music notation to life so that clicking on the notes, have them play. The user could put these notes in a list and create a song that can automatically be played by users, maybe a selection of songs that could be played by users. Maybe the notes highlight as they play, so you can follow along with the piece of music. By bringing it into Scratch, we've now added a whole other dimension to this musical score. It's added a visual component for those who may be hard of hearing. It's maybe added some interactivity if you're clicking on the notes to play them. And so it's a really fun way of engaging in a very different way with your music. So here, this is a clickable one where I can actually click on the notes and play them and hear the correct sound. And then, I could practice playing them in a different order, back and forth. But now I can engage with this piece of music, which I think brings a lot of dynamic life to it. Another really fun project that people love to do is to create a digital instrument. So here we were looking at the digital score, but one of the things that's really fun to do is to create your own instrument that folks can compose their own music on. So we have the starter project called Piano, and we have an achiever unit called Code the Piano, where you can learn how to create one of these for yourself. In this particular project, we could change the instrument. And it's a really fun way of being able to again create something that maybe you don't have access to a piano in real life. Maybe you just like the challenge of being able to recreate an instrument and be able to manipulate the sounds. By being able to have this slider here where we can change the instrument, we've actually created more of a electronic piano, with all the buttons up top. This project, again, you could manipulate the beats per minute, so you could speed things up. You can try making the sounds different by recording your own sounds. Even you could record yourself singing the notes and then add them here into the project in order to engage with the piano in a different way. There's all sorts of different things that you can do. And also, it's a really great chance to explore things like variables. When I go inside this project, one of the things that I see is that I could set the instrument for each individual note here, but just by changing the instrument in one place doesn't necessarily change it for everybody. So for this particular note, you'll see now they're two separate instruments because I've only set the, I pick instruments that are so complicated for me to say. Pizzicato here, I've only set that on this one sprite. So all the other sprites are still playing a different instrument. One of the ways that I can get around that is to store what instrument I want in a variable. And then if I use that inside this set instrument block, I can change the instrument automatically across all the keyboard keys here. So again, this is a way of us leveling up the basic piano. We can start basic by just having a few notes, and then we can continue to add these layers of complexity to our project to bring it into a whole different level. You could also do things like, write a score and encourage people to try to play it on the piano, have the note names show on the piano for those who are learning the instrument. And another really fun way that I actually love to engage with instruments on Scratch is to think about alternatives. So this uses my video motion. Again, it's not capturing an image of my face or any of my data, so this is very safe. But what it's doing is it's sensing the motion on the screen. And as I move past the buttons, using my hand, my head, I'm giving myself a workout here. Whoop, I stay low. I can use video motion in order to engage with this alternate piano, which is if I can stay still. And one more I'll show you. This is again another one of our starter projects that'll be in those resources that I share with you. This is called Musical Droplets. And it is a version of a piano where different parts of the screen are associated with a different note. So as you click or drag around the screen, you end up being able to create a piece of music. And I also love that it has this really fun, I don't know, it feels like magical, witchy, but also like very soothing vibes coming from the slowly color changing screen and the lovely ripple effect when you click a note. Instead of using keyboard keys or maybe motion or a mouse click, you could also try using the Makey Makey. If you've never seen a Makey Makey before, um, it is this lovely little external tool that we have. This is a tool that was in part co-created by a member of the Scratch team, and it's really fun because you connect it to your keyboard through a USB cable, and then you have these alligator clips. If I get close, you could hopefully see there's some different keyboard keys, like space available here. You connect these alligator clips to different spots for keyboard keys. Connect these to conductive instruments, could be yourself, could be a banana, could be pudding, could be all sorts of things. And you can use these in order to have an external keyboard, maybe pieces of foil, maybe conductive cloth. So you can create an instrument from all sorts of interesting materials around your workspace in order for students to look. I could even use a jingle bell as a horn. I could connect it to a space key, connect the space key to the horn sound, and now when I jingle the bell, it actually makes a horn sound. All sorts of different ways that you can sort of play with sound and creating a different experience around sound. This one's a drum sequencer. This is another fun starter project that we have available in Scratch. And what I love about this is it allows the player to create their own sound, and it's a really interesting coding challenge that folks can explore. So let me just play this one. First, I click on the spaces in order to change the color, and each color is sort of associated with a sound. And so then as I play it, as it touches each square here, it's looking at the color and determining what sound to play. You may have seen some of these projects on maybe like a Google Doodle screen or in other places. And it's a really interesting way of being able to think about how you're making a beat, where the rests are, where the white is, that is kind of a rest, versus where the color is, that is associated then with a different sound. And so as it's approaching the pink, it plays the hi-hat sound. The blue is a clap. The yellow is a drum beat. And so you're able to create your own music using this really fun sequencer. And a few other blocks I just want to mention before we get close to wrapping today are the loudness blocks. These aren't music per se, but I really love the loudness blocks because they have a lot of fun applications. So these loudness blocks I'm talking about, it's actually a reporter block that records the loudness in the room around you. And so you could do things like have it sense how loud it is, and then maybe that changes the size of the sprite on the screen. Maybe this little horn gets bigger or louder depending on how much noise is in the room. Maybe you make a sound graph project or an interesting project that sort of moves and changes as you increase or decrease the volume. We'll talk a little bit more about this in an upcoming session with some interactive art. But again, it's just an interesting way of thinking about sound. In this case, it's sound coming from your space. We're not recording anything. Nothing that's being said in this space is being recorded. It's just really understanding the loudness of the room. This can get tricky when you're in a classroom full of 20 people and you need everybody to sort of be quiet or be loud at the same time, right? So this is sometimes better done when you are in a space by yourself. But it is a really fun opportunity to explore really just volume, noise, sound. What does it all mean, and how can we use it to manipulate projects? As we close out our session today, let's look at Scratch's creative learning spiral. We have imagined, created, and played. So now it's time to share and reflect and iterate. Imagine again. We want to celebrate a culture of getting unstuck and celebrate what was learned from missteps. For those new to Scratch, it can be helpful to get stuck and experiment a bit with blocks before you, as the facilitator, share tips and tricks. It can be powerful to model getting stuck and showing that it's okay to not have all the answers. That productive struggle is really valuable. And debugging and iterating alongside your learners makes you an active participant as well, as everyone learns through play and tinkering. You can find our debugging resources in our learning library for more. As we think about creating, iterating on our work, or debugging, keep in mind that pair programming can be valuable, especially when you have groups of different experience levels or interests. Pair programming is a practice where two developers collaborate, sharing a keyboard and mouse to work on the same task or project. One person is the driver who creates the code, while the other is the navigator who reviews, guides, and thinks strategically. Roles are then switched frequently to balance tasks and share knowledge. Together, the pair can create rich and dynamic projects, while they have opportunities to teach and learn from each other and explore different solutions. The pairs could divide up the tasks in a project. A student interested in art might create sprites, or a student interested in music or Foley might create sounds or musical scores, while another focuses on coding. Or students could pair up at specific moments to debug or add additional elements together. If you have a Scratch account, your project will save automatically. If you don't have a Scratch account yet, you can save your project to your computer. Click File and then choose Save to your computer. Next time you want to work on your project, go to scratch.mit.edu and click Create. Then click File and choose Load from your computer to upload your project. If you have a Scratch account, you can share your project and add it to Studios. Click the orange Share button to share your project to the Scratch community. Click the See Project Page button on the project editor to go to the project page. This is where you can add instructions and notes about your project. Now, other Scratchers can see and interact with your project. We promote many pathways, many solutions, because often there is not one right way to create your project. Some projects may reach a higher ceiling and have more complexity, while others can show how you have stretched to widen the walls of what's possible. We encourage learners to have fun tinkering, work with their peers, and design something to showcase their passion, and then proudly share their project when they finish. You can see our reflection and sharing resources in our learning library for more. Speaking of reflection, learners can reflect on their project creation and process as they complete a show and tell sharing sheet, or project gallery walk, self reflection, and peer feedback sheet, which can be found in our learning library. Their peers are encouraged to leave feedback or comments on the sheet for the creator as they view the projects in a studio or participate in a gallery walk. Just note that learners need a Scratch account and access to the online editor to participate in studios. In addition to the resources shared throughout these slides, I've shared here some additional resources where you can find help, inspiration, and information. Dive into our learning library for a wealth of materials that continues to grow. I've mentioned resources on the Achievery during today's session. The Achievery platform connects K 12 students to a new world of digital learning. And the Scratch Foundation is partnered with the Achievery to provide free beginner and intermediate creative coding lesson plans on a variety of topics for educators, caregivers, and learners. On the platform, there are project guides and accompanying videos that support the exploration of Scratch. Lessons are perfect for those who may want more guidance or scaffolds to start. And Scratch units cover a variety of topics, so students can take the skills they learn and create projects about things that relate to their passions and interests, while engaging in playful exploration. You can sign up to access for free on their website. Thank you for exploring this webinar and our resources today. I hope today's session has sparked ideas and will inspire your own unique projects that speak to your passions and interests.